elaborate a little bit further on the material Juanita already brought to you. And in the third place, I'm going to bring an extension on how we get given minority, but also deals with the fact that not only minorities can be challenging of a lot, but even if this part of the majority, the white majority, black majority, their target on minorities. But so the first thing they say is that we have other alternatives, right? So two things to know here. First of all, those alternatives aren't preventing damages or preventing harms, right? They are only given once the harm is already one already harmed the population. So we think that our alternative is actually preventing damages. But second, it's not as example, Juanita didn't say that we were going to ban protests and else. We think that, for example, these are the house. But third, we think that the protests that are going to be happening in our side of the house could be, for example, enhanced by the fact that the majority, for example, majority challenged the law, and that it's not like an exclusive challenge or an exclusive claim to the minority. So we actually have more chances of solidarity, because people can now see that, for example, the claim that the minority is not exclusive to the minority, but that someone from the challenge that, or anyone challenged that in the first place. The second thing they say is that, for example, this leads to a greater harm. Second, I'm going to repeat myself right here. It's not preventing anything in their side of the house. But second, this is mainly harmful because sometimes and often the harms that are in constitutional law are something irreversible. To make any effort possible in order to prevent harms that could be, they are doing absolute opposition. In the third place, they say that the minority is an exclusive right of the minority, because it's actually challenging something we all believe in, because it's challenging participation, it's challenging human dignity, and we think that therefore everyone is entitled to make this claim, because maybe the specific harm is only affecting a minority, but the abstract attack on our juridical and social system is harming anyone. So therefore everyone should be entitled to make this claim, because everyone is being attacked by this specific claim. Second, we think that, for example, the fact that only minorities have an exclusive right to make these kind of challenges only seems to worsen the fact that we see a context in which we see, for example, minorities attacking us as a majority. We think that in our side of the house, solidarity is enhanced because we are sending a message that anyone can protect the minority, because anyone can challenge the law that attacks the minority, not only the minority given being left alone to challenge and protect their rights. We think solidarity is enhanced on our side of the house. And in the fourth place, they say that, for example, it will be controlled by the most powerful, right? So first of all, in the BOI, Juanita already brought to you the example of how this doesn't happen, because mainly the decision is in either side of the house being given by a judge that will, in either side of the house, for example, protect the minority, or for example, don't protect the minority. So we think that this specific harm doesn't happen because the majority is in deciding. The fact is that, for example, the majority decides when the Congress is deciding. We think that the Congress is a scenario where the majority could actually impose herself into the minority, whereas the juridical system, it is a judge, is a more, comparatively speaking, equal place when actually a judge, a progressive judge, could, for example, recognize the rights of the minorities. But right now, being done with the material brought by the opening opposition, I'm going to elaborate a little bit further on what Juanita brought to you. So in the first place, we talked about participation, right? We didn't hear any response or any efficient response as to why this, for example, wasn't enabling participation. We think that, on the other hand, it enables most people to participate. And why specifically challenging a constitution is important? If we see that, for example, democracies are based on checks and balances, right? Everyone controlling everyone. We see that, for example, the fact that anyone can challenge a law that a president is promoting in the Congress, or that a Congress is promoting, is something that empowers any citizen in order to check and balance the big structures and political structure we have right now. Mainly because if for example, anyone is entitled to challenge a law and get, for example, promoted by the president, we're seeing that anyone is being able to check and control the biggest authorities in our political system, and not being able, for example, or not being complied to wait until the next elections in order to make this control, but actually being able to control the president and the Congress as they work during their term. So we think that even if we're talking about participation and materializing the values for democracy or constitution, this is checks and balances, we still win in our side of the house. There hasn't been a response to this. Second, when it does explain to you, this enables a better, comparatively speaking, justice system by organizations and by individuals. For example, if you're not, but you think that this will harm you in the future, because maybe if it's a healthcare law, you will actually lose the money later. You're also entitled to protect yourself in advance. How? By challenging a law that you see that could be harmful in the future. We think that any citizen, even if it's not a minority, is entitled to this thing. But now the minorities want to give you structural reasons why mayor OO's world being of health. We think that, for example, it'll be way easier to have access to health, judicial help at the house, because we don't have to wait, one, to do harm to materialize itself. Findings in the reality, we can say that organizations that can actually think in the future will not have to wait this, but actually prevent this anytime it happens. Second, we think there are better judicial decisions being made on our side of the house, mainly because in OO's case, all the context or all the juridical burden has to be proven individually speaking, or proving harms or individual burdens. We think that if the Constitution is general and the Constitution, for example, is kind of, but actually this law is unconstitutional because it will harm anyone anytime, or because its values or the values it defends are actually harmful to the Constitution and the social contract. Because we actually engage with the minority, because we actually explain why any individual should be entitled to this, because we actually explain how to have better justice and a better justice system, we think we win this debate. Thank you very much.
All right, we thank that speaker and invite the deputy leader of the opposition. Okay, yes.
Kills their own case, because they're trying to tell you that the judge will really decide, the advocate who decides whether or not this law is really constitutional or not. This means their argument about having the benefit, about having protecting minority and all of those things, all of those things is still based on this judge. Especially why they don't tell you why the judge in these areas tend to be protecting the minority. We don't understand why their case still stands at all. Two issues stand in this debate. First issue, how you protect minority better under their side of the house. They're under our side of the house. They're trying to tell you that we will refund damages. First of all, it's not true, because law and court is based on evidence. This means you have to have evidence that it already impacts you, it already harms you, and this is the only time you can bring this to the court. Especially with Supreme Court. Supreme Court usually accept cases that comes from references from lower court, right? This means the harm is already exists under both sides of the house. So this is not a benefit that they can take, since the only reason you can go to court is because the harm already happens to you. But secondly, if they say that this minority is not well versed in law, and they don't see the implication of this law, law that possibly have towards themselves, we don't understand why these people will suddenly appeal. We don't understand why these people suddenly will go to Supreme Court and challenge the law, right? Under their own characterizations, minority will not do this, and this is not a benefit that they can offer you. But then we told you very, very important things. We told you what kind of minority what kind of law usually minority needs to repeal. It is usually a law that benefits majority. Take a look at the case where the Muslim guy have to trim his beard in prison. For most people, they will see this as protecting me, because this means that people cannot hide their weapons inside their beard. But for this one minority Muslim guy, this means that he cannot go through with his religion. He cannot protect his needs to have birth, because it is sunnah from Rasul, right? This means that this kind of law usually are against what minority wants. This means under their side of the house, solidarity doesn't exist because you directly go against the interest of the majority anyway. But that's first. But secondly, if they want to talk about solidarity, I don't understand why majority will give solidarity because they don't feel the problem of this minority, right? This is why it shouldn't be open standing because the problem is very specific to this one minority who get the impact from below very differently from other people. So this means under their side of the house, this kind of law is very dangerous because you will have higher backlash. This means this majority can, if like the law is declared unconstitutional, the majority if still declared constitutional, the majority can appeal again and say that this should be still declared as constitutional. This means you're backlashing the effort of the minority because you allow majority in the conversation under the side of the house. But how do we protect minority better under side of the house? First of all, airtime. Take a look at healthcare, right? This is very controversial. Like if you compare cases of healthcare with case where prisoners don't have bed, this is very like different things. Healthcare is very controversial. What society mostly debates about. We think that Supreme Court is not possible to deny this case. And weird case seems really small and will get less attention of media under their side of the house because you are compared to these big cases under their side of the house. Under your side of the house, this means you have less light to the big cases or the smaller laws that might impact minority greatly and impact them differently. So you drown out their voice and you drown out the discussion that might happen in society as to how you can protect minority better. You harm the understanding of society towards minority under their side of the house. No, thank you. But most importantly, Panu also told you a lot of other things why minority will be harmed. We hear no responses at all. Second issue then, why check and balances will be better under a side of the house. They say that check and balance will be better under a side of the house because you can repeal the law. First of all, we don't understand why repealing the law is a very special check and balance, right? You can still vote, you can protest, and we will show you why protesting and voting is a better comparative to the check and balances. Mostly, the main reason is that because countries and societies influence is really, really different. Maybe both want peace, maybe both want jobs, but the way that both actors view the way to get these goals is very different. For example, some people in society say that trade war gains jobs. Some others say that this makes industries losing jobs. This means that there will be differences in the mind of society and the government as to what kind of law will benefit you. Why is this likely and why is this harmful? Because first of all, government's interest and government's view is always long term compared to society that is short term. Like trade war probably seems like it has negative implications now, but later on it probably harms China from doing playing and manipulating their currency, right? And society is not able to see this, especially society who probably lost job because of this. So we think we prevent this long-term harm under our side of the house because society who doesn't know anything cannot repeal this law, that could potentially benefit them in the future. But secondly, society is partisan while laws that are enacted by the government is mostly bipartisan because it has gone through Congress, it has gone through processes of lobbying, and it has gone through processes of compromises. Before that,
Note how their case is not comparative in terms of how all those specific benefits they are bringing from their side of the house can happen in our side of the house. Mainly, those specific plaintiffs that have been harmed have the possibility to have a better case in those specific instances when they appeal those laws.
No, what we're trying to say is that if you repeal this, if you as a general society who doesn't have a long-term view repeal this law, you don't get the possible benefit, and this is a harm that is only happened under their side of the house. Only under our side of the house, you allow the government, even if there is protest, but protest is more bipartisan, right? We will show you, okay, basically, since I show you that this is bipartisan versus partisan, like society mostly are partisan, this means repealing doesn't directly benefit people, it could undo some benefits for greater good and for long-term benefit. Why is protest a better benefit? First of all, it goes directly to the government and it goes directly to the systems of the government. This means you're basically telling them that if you continue this bad job, we will not vote for you, and this means you are directly talking to the government who creates this law to prevent them from making bad laws. But secondly, it can be done before a law is passed, right? Protest can be done when Congress wants to pass a law. This means you can prevent harm beforehand because you harm the passing of this harmful law, and this means you prevent the harm better under side of the house. But thirdly and most importantly, protests are more open to criticism. If Republicans under their side of the house decide to go to Supreme Court and repeal Obamacare, this decision will be based on on how many you have Republican judges sitting there, right? Under Democrats on ground cannot talk about this, they cannot change this because it's basically about the judge there. But under our side of the house, if Democrats protest, Republicans can protest back, and this means you create a system that listens to all parties. And this is very important. Understanding law is a permanent thing, right? So you shouldn't allow a certain partisan action change the law at the expense of other parts of society, at the expense of long-term benefit. We're very proud to oppose.
Before I invite the next speaker, please just request that if you're all in the house, if you're using the base keyboard to time yourself, you just put it on silent. Alright, we thank that speaker and the member of government. Thank
Panel, from CG, we don't exactly believe that this debate is about where are minorities better. We believe that this debate is about the importance that constitutional rights, values, and principles that OG was talking about are better in reality, and how we have the possibility to have a society in which people are able to fulfill those specific values and principles and rights that are specifically in constitutions. First, some rebuttals to OO. We believe that most of their harms are not mutually exclusive with the case they're bringing you, meaning that those people that are directly affected by the unconstitutional law can still continue to appeal those specific laws, specifically in our case. Mainly what's going to happen with those specific people is that they are going to have a better plaintiff in that specific court because they have a direct damage. Those who do not have that specific damage have even a greater burden in terms of proving how this could damage others in reality. We are going to explain to you how we believe this is better for those specific plaintiffs that this doesn't happen. But taking into account that, we know how this is even difficult for Republican Party to appeal specific laws they believe they're not good in reality, because they have a greater burden to specifically prove how this may affect other people in reality, or how this is incoherent with the Constitution in reality. It's going to be even harder for them to appeal those specific laws to maintain their political interests. But first, we are going to explain to you who makes laws in reality. We believe that these laws are directly made by Congress, meaning political parties directly, who have specific political interests to maintain themselves in power, meaning satisfying sponsors. In reality, for example, this is highly the case with the Republican Party in the United States, where they tend to have laws that satisfy specifically those economic groups with them, but also mainly they tend to have populistic views of reality or populistic interests to satisfy those specific voters to maintain themselves in power. Why do we believe this is highly problematic? In reality, we believe that this means that we don't necessarily have laws that are going to respect those specific values we have in the social contract in reality. For example, what happens, even if that specific law doesn't make a direct harm in reality to people, it's in contradiction with those specifically constitutional values in reality. For example, the tax cut that Republicans passed through Congress last year, in 2017 directly, what we see is directly that even if it doesn't create a specific harm to a specific population, meaning that in their scenarios no one is going to be able to directly tell that law is unconstitutional, in that comparative, we see how in our world we have the possibility to explain to a judge how this law isn't taken into account in terms of the constitutional values we have in society, such as the possibility of being in equal terms in reality in taxation, for example, directly. Why do we believe that this is problematic and our world is better? We believe that our world is better because we have the possibility to attack those specific laws that we believe are not directly related with the society we have structure in reality in our specific constitution. But why do we believe this is really directly important? We believe that mainly we have a better representation, not only in terms of those specific minorities, as my opening was telling you directly, but also other groups that being in the majority directly are not being represented by those specific political interests
interests that move Congress in reality. We believe that that specific world is better because they have the possibility to attack those laws. They feel they're in the same way of the constitutional value. In a second way, we believe we have a better accountability in terms of how specifically we have the possibility to tell people that the laws that Congress is passing in reality are not directly related with the constitution we want. They told us that in their scenario, what happens is that the Supreme Court justices are selected by the Republican Party or by the Democratic Party, and they also have political interests. Yes, they may have political interests, but they still have to give a sentence based on the specific constitutions and the values that already exist in that specific constitution. And a 10th panel that this is mostly a minority case. In most of other countries, it exists even more check and balances when they select those judges that are in constitutional courts or in the Supreme specific courts of justice, meaning that in most of the cases, those specifically political interests don't exist in reality in most of those specific countries. But why do we believe that this is a better scenario for people, and why do we believe that people have that specific incentive? Because even if people is not directly harmed, responding directly by they told us that we weren't proving directly how more people is going to be interested in those specific things. We believe that in the comparative, we have the possibility of those people who in reality don't have an actual possibility to do so. For example, humanitarian groups that in reality aren't able to find that specific person that has the harm directly, but also the possibility of them being directly better represented in reality. But before I continue,
if the law is truly that bad, your politicians have the potential of losing more voters in your future. Why then those alternatives to protest, it should be justified taking away the airtime that minority have to those cases.
no doubt, even if that's the case, we are submitted of those we are still dependent on those political interests in reality. In most of the cases, Republican Party had the possibility of enacting bad laws in reality, but even after that, we still see they have the majority in the upper house of Congress directly. For example, even after these midterms election directly, we see how even if the law is bad, it not necessarily means that people are able to acknowledge that that law is bad. We are giving the possibility of those who acknowledge that the law is bad, to appeal it in reality. Note panel, how we have proven to you directly how specifically these laws are made in reality. And this is really important in terms of how this directly attacks the opening opposition case, in which they don't really explain to us what's the specific harms of other people directly having the possibility to do so. But note that we were the only team that directly responded to the fact that mainly politicians have the possibility to change in Congress directly, and even if they have the possibility to change, they still have political interests that make them do bad laws in reality. In our world, we have the possibility for those people to fulfill and protect the coherence with the social values they want to enact in those specific scenarios in reality. We believe that by this specific scenario, we have a better accountability in terms of how people want to see their own society and are not dependent on political interests, but also we have a better representation of those who don't have representation in Congress right now. For all of those things, proud to propose.
We thank the speaker and invite the member of opposition, Kenya.
Opening opposition talks about the efficacy in court and about how it provides check and balances, right? But we will play in our worst case scenario, even if in the outside of the house there will be no judicial activism, for example, if this minority is not represented through law, then our changes will be better. Why? Because understand that in the side of the house, the one that will fight for this kind of minority is NGOs and social movement, for example. That this social movement will have to divert their focus from exactly helping and giving affirmative action towards this minority, for example, or lobbying the parliament and trying to make organic changes within the society. Right? We have this divert in focus will exactly provide only an unsustainable changes that we champion organic change in our side of the house. We will change the society mindset and we change the structure slowly from the parliament, for example. We think that this kind of changes is better and more sustainable, right? So first issue that why our change will be more sustainable and they hamper the organic change that will happen in our side of the house. Because firstly, let's engage in closing, right? Closing says that lawmakers and judges are biased towards a certain group that they only, for example, provide those who are rich. But firstly, we have their bias as access in your side of the house too. Because judges, for example, are still going to be biased in your side of the house. Then how are you going to win the court if the judge is biased, for example? Then the parliament is still against you. Then the parliament will make another discriminative law even if you win, for example. Then this is not sustainable at all. Even if you repeal one law, then there will be another law that replaces it, for example. And this is very bad because in their side you will only fight on this, right? But secondly, we think that they constantly bring that constitutional that this kind of law need to be constitutional, right? But we think that it is bad because their only basis is constitution. That their basis is not about protecting people, for example. That it can be used both ways by the rich guys, for example, or by the conservative too, for example. That about when there is a law about protecting gay rights and gay marriage, for example, that these conservative white people, for example, can say that this gay rights is not constitutional, that gay rights is not in this second amendment, for example. That this is exactly harmful because it is easier for you to just prove that gay rights is not constitutional rather than proving that this gay rights is harming and affecting me as a human being, right? That this means that their open standing can also be misused and abused by those who are oppressive. But going to our exclusive contribution, because about the organic change will be better, right? Because firstly, in their side of the house, they are dividing all of the focus and resources by these NGOs and social movements. Because for their benefit to run, they need to focus entirely on hiring good attorneys, for example. And this is very expensive. They need to cover the court fee that is very big, right? Because court takes a very long time. That it takes, for example, 5 months to get just to the Supreme Court, for example. And in the Supreme Court, you need to take another 3 months, for example. That this kind of process is exactly taking all of our resources towards this kind of jurisdiction thing. But we think that where is the comparative better in our side of the house? Because you stop their ability to give help towards the black community, for example, that you want to protect. Equipping them with the skills, the opportunities, the scholarships that they need, for example. You stop their ability to campaign to get the popular support so that society will accept the black community, for example, and fight for them too, right? If you stop all of this ability to lobby the parliament, so the parliament will actually fight for us. We know this is bad because it is not hand in hand with organic change. And their side is not a wise use of resources because even in their best case scenario, let's say that they win this court, right? Their benefit is very marginal because when one law is repealed, for example, let's take the example of anti-immigration law, that you repeal this anti-immigration law, for example, that people are still against you, that nobody still wants to nobody will want to hire you as an illegal immigrant still, for example, that you are not protected, right? There will be still a disadvantage because the parliament still don't want to give you citizenship, for example, that you still cannot get citizenship. That, for example, another law can be made that is also discriminative towards you, for example, because the parliament is exactly still against you. But there is no real benefit towards this kind of minority that they want to protect at all, even in their best case scenario when they win this law, when they repeal this bad law, right? But secondly, why our side of the house is better? Because we rely more on the organic change. I think that this is better because we want to empower this minority. That we make safe house for these illegal immigrants, for example, that we protect them from ICE, right? That this kind of thing means that we can give them skill, that they can work, for example, be empowered, so that society will no longer think that they are that way, that the society will actually think that they are useful for the economy, for example, that the society opinion will shift, right? That we lobby the parliament, for example, we lobby Democrats and the Republicans to further represent our forces. That this will change the root of the problem, not like in the side of the house when you only change the surface. That we ensure ensure that no other bad law against these illegal immigrants can be passed, that this protection will be very sustainable. That we ensure that there will be follow-up, that there will be affirmative actions, for example, there will be better, easier green cards for this kind of illegal immigrants, for example. That this kind of thing will only happen outside of the house. We propose a better, more sustainable changes. Yes, closing.
Directly note panel height, they never respond to the fact that the exclusive benefit that we have is that we have the possibility to protect those specific values without having a harm that exists in reality. Meaning that everyone in reality have the possibility to protect what they believe society is in reality by the Constitution without having any specific harm.
Why is this constitutional value is more important than protecting those illegal immigrants who are not getting their rights, for example, who are persecuted? We have this kind of protection is better, that your principle cannot run with practicality, that this minority can be protected and this minority can have a sustainable rights that we protect in 50 years, for example, that they will still get the protection, right? But second issue now, why legal fight will be better so also in our side of the house? Because firstly, we need that you cannot say that, for example, just because one law is unconstitutional, that it is, for example, a very bad law for everyone, right? Because understand that law is not a black and white thing. That, for example, increasing the premium of insurance and healthcare, for example, you might think that it is a bad thing, for example, but it might be a good thing because it increases the quality of the healthcare that you are giving towards the poor people, for example. That these poor people doesn't have to, for example, queuing so much long for a very long time that their life cannot be saved, for example. We have this kind of thing means that in our side of the house, in the side of the house, your harm will be purely theoretical, that you cannot surely know that this law is bad or good, but you repeal it anyway. But secondly, we have even in the case that it is severe enough, we think that legal fight can also happen in our side of the house. Because and it has a bigger likelihood for success. This is what we see from opening, right? Because you portray yourself as the victim, that society will more likely to empathize with you. We think that this is a better thing because judges also think about the popular support, that you are more likely to win outside the house when you portray yourself as the victim. You are proud.
Alright, we thank the speaker and invite the government to take it.
The reason why the opposition loses this debate is because they has never proved why their mechanisms are mutually exclusive. What happens in reality, and the government has to prove in order to win this debate, is that we guarantee a better future and a better quality, for example, for the generality of the population. What they are defending, for example, is that minorities are going to be harmful, and now I'm going to begin to rebuttal the closing opposition directly. Firstly, they say about how, for example, this process is taking out a lot of resources. First, why this negative? They have never proved that. On the comparative, even when we accept that these take out many resources, we believe that on the comparative we have a better trade-off when at least, for example, we have more people fighting for their fundamental rights and for the basis of a national basis, that just on the comparative taking out some resources that we believe are completely irrelevant in this debate. Second rebuttal for them is that, for example, the parliament is not going to be able to give some benefits for minorities, for example, migrants, or for example, affirmative actions. This clashes directly with the extension that my partner was saying. Why? Because we are proving in this debate that the specific dynamics of the parliament are not as they work. For example, we already told you that political parties have specific interest. And somehow we are the only team that we are able to show you that this is a type of balances and check and balances between the branches of power. Therefore, if we empower citizens in a judicial system, we are directly balancing the parliamentary branch that is being co-opted, for example, by a specific interest of the political parties. Therefore, the parliamentary, for example, how this can benefit some migrants, first, is not mutually exclusive. This can be a tool to fight for rights. But actually, it's a better tool for the parliament and for the judicial system when we have even better resources to fight for but just one branch like the parliament one. Now, why, for example, they say the legal side is better? And they have to, for example, benefit the poor, the society, and how the society is more empathetic. If we analyze and we accept that the society is empathetic, that's in our side of the house. Why is important in this debate? Because if they are saying that the society is empathetic, this means that the society is able to understand, for example, a little bit those minorities to fight for them. It's not like the minorities are just alone and the society cannot fight for them, but actually because of that empathy, they are able to be conscious that someone is being hurted, even if I am not part of that minority, and even if I am not the one that is affected. That is why we have a legal better system in our side, because we believe that society not always works alone and just work by minorities, but they can co-work in order to fight for some rights. Now, I'm going to rebuttal the opening opposition. First, they talk about how we have to prove that the other alternatives are good enough. This directly engages with what Fernando was telling you, because we already proved that the other alternatives are not good enough, talking about the dynamics of the parliament and how they work nowadays. But also, where in the comparative do we believe that the minorities are better heard? When we have even more impact in our side. Why? Because we have more quantity of people demanding for some rights, because we have more pressure on the media. Why? Because more people is demanding on the same topic, because more amount of people is saying this is being hurted, this is being hurted, and not just the directly implicators. This means that on the comparative, our minorities are also more hurt in our side of the house, because we have more people claiming for them, but just not the minorities. Also, what happens many times in the minorities is that they are not always able to sue, for example, because they are afraid, for example, to sue, because they don't know how to do so, because they have some structural problems in order to demand their rights. What happens in this scenario is that in the comparative, we also have the minorities to be heard, because we understand that someone is fighting for them. Like, for example, an NGO that is selling, even when I am not poor, there are many poor people that need to be defended, and this is an extra tool to empower people. Okay.
Under your work, the parliament passed a law that against the majority, for example, principle. Why did the majority will have the interest to kick up the minority when they also have the problem that you told them?
For example, as I was telling you, an NGO that fights for the human rights, that fights for the poor, is not only going to fight for their own interest, but for the interest of the population, because that directly will involve its own vision as organization, its own vision as human beings, because I just don't want to protect myself, I want to protect the other ones in order for all in generally to have better rights. What happens in their side of the house is that the generality of the population is also being protected and is also being benefited, because we don't need a president in order to act. Now, I'm going to say why do we win this debate. First, we win this debate with gaining the opening government, because the opening government has taught us about, for example, how the organizations have more coherence, how we better democracy in terms of participation. But what we as closing are saying is that specifically we don't need a person to be harmed, but we have causes that harms everybody. Hernando was telling you specifically how issues like, for example, taxes does not affect just one person, but affects the generality of the population. Therefore, we have proved you that there is not necessary to have a direct harm in order to act. But secondly, and most important, we have proven why making laws is important nowadays, and that is because there is a strict contradiction in laws and constitution. This type of contradiction is not only fought by the parliament, but is being able to fought by other alternatives like the judicial power that the citizens may have. Why do we win this debate? Because we were the only team able to prove you that no matter what happens with the other alternatives like the protest, like the parliament, etc., this is an extra mechanism that can be exclusively to the people to have the power and to hurt what they really want to gain without having interest inside. They have not proved why this side is mutually exclusive. We have proven exclusive benefits helping the general community and also the minorities.
All right, we thank that speaker and invite the opposition to take it.
Panels, the government bench is rather confusing because they provide us lack of characterization in what kind of constitution are we doing in status quo, in what kind of practical harm that this constitution might be harmful. Is the harm actually already happening, or is the harm is actually going to happen in the future? I think that is the biggest mistake of government bench, thus all their cases is rather confusing, right? But second of all, this debate is not talking where power or people who are getting harmed are a lot and individuals who directly get harmed is also a lot. Because if that is the case, that they will no need to use open standing, just simply reappeal, right? Those mechanisms exist. Indeed, in their side of the house, they need to prove the exclusivity in which probably they could win in this kind of reappealing when they are not directly affected. I think that is something that is harmful and never been proven by all government bench, right? But lastly, I think the clarification will be to closing the government, because they want to argue like political parties and politicians are all dumb, are all bad actors. Note this, that is not the case, because politicians and political parties happen in a spectrum. It means they come from a lot of individuals' background, they come from a lot of interests. That is why even if Democrats and Republicans is two biggest parties in America, there's still small parties that will protect you, even if you're just from small communities. It means they need to show you more likelihood in this debate, right? Two things my speech. First of all, why it is okay to sacrifice some part of democracy that government bench want to talk about, right? Because they want to argue to you, like, look, it is not okay to bridge democracy and reappealing when you're not part of it is actually part of democracy, right? Do understand that true, that reappealing is also your rights in democracy, but it's not the only rights you have. You have right of voting, you have rights of becoming a politician, you have rights of many things, right? But second of all, government already limit your rights anyway in democracy. Minimum age of voting, places you can do protest and so on and so forth. What is the conclusion of all of this? There is a certain limitation government and democracy need to put, and limiting plaintiff act is also one of it. Why is that the case? Because it balances the power in status quo in order to make a greater good future, in order to make a greater good objectives, right? Why is that the case? Because in their side of the house, what they're going to take is only increasing the problem of process in which government probably need to take a certain part of policy in order for government to make a certain part of decision, right? That's why in the side of the house, probably you don't want a closing direct border of Mexico, increasing tariff and so on and so forth. We say what happened in this side of the house is probably you're going to make this kind of policies become freeze. Because the moment you appeal to a plaintiff, that is the moment the policy is not going to be passed. I think that is when the harm is going to happen. Because in their side of the house, indeed you are going to prolong the harm, right? Prolonging the harm of economy declining, prolonging the harm of increasing like individuals' criminal rate and so on, later on, right? What is the trade-off that later on, the trade-off that to take in our set of the house. Okay, we probably don't have a lot of constant check and balance, right? But it is okay. Why is that the case? Because that is for a greater good. The reason in the set of the house, people want to appeal and becoming all these individuals that want to appeal, even if they are not plaintiff, exactly because these individuals are not used to the fresh law that government is trying to take, right? Whereas this fresh law is probably important, like closing the border of Mexican, like increasing all the check and balance in the border, or even using tariff and so on and so forth. Those are the necessary measures that we need to take. In their set of the house, what we're going to make is instability of economy also and security. Why is that better in our side of the house? Because in our side, in the future, you're going to have a better sustainability in terms of your country, giving like all of this stability of economy, right? That is why democracy is not just about your rights in short term, but it's also sustainability. In their side of the house, what they're going to create is exactly reappealing and reappealing again without necessarily having a solution. Second thing, why minorities will venture off in our side of the house? Because that is the big intake of all government benches. They want to protect minorities, and solidarities coming from the majorities helping minorities, right? But do understand that solidarities to minorities is not only expressed in this kind of plaintiff. There are other mechanisms that opening opposition might talk to you, right? But why on the side of the house we're going to make it worse? Because number one, it's very uncertain whether this NGO or individual is going to pass this kind of plaintiff, right? That is what my member brought to me. It's a long process in which probably you need to show a lot of argument. You need to show a lot of evidence, in which probably you need a lot of things to be proven, right? Things like very tangible. What is the ground proof of economic imbalance to the minorities? Or what is the data in which statistically show that minorities is being harmed in order for you to also help the minorities? What is the harm of this? I think the harm is immense because this NGO will have a double focus. In which right now this NGO will directly help these minorities on the ground, but they also need to allocate money in which to go towards this reappealing. I think that is the moment where the help towards NGO to these minorities will not be productive. Closing.
In that specific moment, we see how coherence is better for those specific people inside society. Those peoples are going to fight in terms of how they can prove some specific damage is going to happen, even if the law directly doesn't damage someone in that specific moment.
The sad truth is the coherence that they want to prove in the side of the house need to have a utilitarian value. It means they need to show what is the value of it, what is the possibility and feasibility in which they can pass this kind of things, right? The harm in the side of the house if they cannot prove that they are right, that is the moment this kind of expose of resources will be allocated towards something that is very uncertain. What is the harm of this, right? The money that previously need to be given to make more hospital or houses for probably immigrants, for probably these black people who are living in Bronx area, or probably individuals who don't get education, become shifted towards all this process of court without necessarily giving any benefit, right? That's why this is an exclusive contribution, because in their set of they want to ask the exclusivity, right? This is mutually exclusive because the money of this NGO and individuals are value limited. These individuals need to distribute that very goodly, right? In their side, you're not going to have that. Okay, let's take your best case scenario. What if they success in one cases? I think the very harm of that is you're having lesser money to help other cases, because that is the one you're going to splurge a lot of money and lesser ability to help other individuals in which living in the different spectrum. Even that this NGO not only sold in one country, probably this is Greenpeace helping people in indigenous area because that area is having a lot of forests. But this Greenpeace also need to help other people living in other countries who also have other problems, right? In their side, this kind of community or this kind of NGO have lesser incentive or have lesser resources in order for them to help other people, right? What is the conclusion of this? We say it is okay in certain way to repress some rights because you have other way and other options and other alternatives to express that kind of rights. But democracy should be balanced in which you ensure that there's a future long-term benefit in order to save everyone. But second, we also better help minorities because right now if NGOs truly want to help these individuals, they can rather allocate things